Hey everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Crate, and we are on to page 7 for Safari Adventure. And page 7 is the same as page 2. So we've got a pocket in the bottom, and then we've got three flaps across the top. So let's start by putting in the pocket, which is 3.5 by 9, and I'm going to double check that. Yes. So it is 3.5 inches by 9, and you're going to score a 1/2 inch on 3 of the 4 sides, and that's going to make your pocket. Okay, make sure your pocket page, your pocket and the spine side are both to the left and right. This is going to get applied to the bottom of the page. There we go. That's that. Okay, now the next thing we've got is this 5 by 8 flap that comes from the top down, 5 by 8. Leaving like a 1/2 inch gap between the top of the flap and the top of the or the bottom of the flap and the top of the pocket. 5 by 8, and on the 5-inch side you're going to score a 1/2 inch. And I didn't have the tape down on these, so we'll do that together real quick. Okay, so this is the top of the page. I'm going to turn it around just because I like to bring the edges to me instead of leaning into your frame. It's easier for you, but it's also a lot easier for me. I can see a lot better when I bring it toward me. Okay. This is a little bit long, so I'm going to try to trim that off real quick. A little bit better. Maybe I can do a little better. Let me try one more time. There we go. There it is, nice and tight. You know me, I can't stand it when it's not straight. It will drive me. And then I can see my little flange here is sticking out a little, so I'm gonna go ahead and hand trim that. There we go, all done. Well done. Okay, that's looking good. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we are going to figure out the halfway mark between the bottom of this flap and the top of this flap, and because it's 5 inches, it's 4.5, so it should be 2 1/4. Because I'm taking a 1/2 inch off for the flange, so that leaves 4.5 here, and half of that is 2 1/4. So I am going to come down from this core line 2 1/4. But first I turn my ruler the right way. 2 1/4, and I'm going to put a little tick mark. Okay. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Come down 2 1/4. And I just did that, and I'm not sure I did the right thing. 2 1/4. Yeah, I did. Okay. Now we're going to install a left and right flap, like so. And these are 4 by 6.5, 4 by 6.5, and you're going to score a 1/2 inch on the 6.5 inch side. All right. I should be burnishing with my bone folder, but I was just using whatever was handy. Okay, so now that I have this tick mark, I know where I want the center of this to be. So now I need to find the center of each one of these flaps on the score line, and since it's 4 inches, I know it's 2 inches. So I'm just going to use my little grid here, put a tick mark, and now I can line that up with the tick mark that's on the pocket page. Okay. So I've got a tick mark here and here. I'm just going to line these up and put this one in. Okay, now I do use this as a reference, but when I've got two that are going to line up together like so, I use it as a reference, but I'm going to actually go by this line here. I'm going to follow the line of the flap here. So rather than trying to be exact on here, if I'm exact on here, these might not line up perfectly. I'd rather have these two line up. So I use it as kind of a starting point, but I definitely want to feed off this line here. There we go. Let's see, how does that look? Looks pretty good. And this folds down like so. And that's page 7. So we open up, right, left, and then we have this pocket. So we'll be placing something inside the pocket to hold it all together. Okay, that's it for now. I'll be right back with some designer paper. Hey everybody, we're going to continue working on Safari Adventure, and we are on to page 7. And page 7 is pretty straightforward. Let me take out some of these papers. So we've got a top flap, a pocket, and then a left and a right flap. So it's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to do the same thing on my left and right flap that I did on the other one, where I'm going to kind of frame something out here. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to dry fit this pocket piece, make sure it looks good. It does. And let's go ahead and get it glued down. Actually, does it look good? Oh, I've got a magnet on the other side, so it's kind of a bump right there. Which I need to make sure, yep, that's page 8. So, all right, let's do it. Wow, that's a bigger gap than I'm happy with. I don't know if I put my pocket in crooked or if I cut this panel crooked, but I'm gonna see if I can't find another piece because I can't live with that. And luckily I have another piece. So I'm gonna let that dry. And while that's drying, let's put this in. Hopefully this is straighter. Let's see. Pretty close. I have to wait for that to dry for a second. So since we're waiting for that to dry, let's do the inside, which I chose this giraffe paper for, and it looks fine. So it's inked and we're ready to go. Oops, I meant to leave the edge open since I'm tucking it in the pocket. I'm breaking my own rules. But I think we'll be okay. There we go. All right, so we can also go ahead and decorate these panels and I'll come back and trim a replacement after all that glue is dried. Okay, here are the pieces that I've cut for, oh, you know what? I had to, no, that's right. Okay, never mind. I think this is what I'm planning. I might need to trim these down. Yeah, so these should be 2 inches, and I made them larger than that. So I'm going to trim it down. Is that right? So this is, let me double check. Yeah. I gotta think about that. Before I do it, I'm going to go ahead and glue this down, and then I'll just measure off the back end. And I'll just show you. Yeah, it's not a very good contrast. There's the edge of my paper. And then I'll have a strip here, and it'll frame it out like we did on the other page. Page 2. Okay, now that that's in, we can back this off. And hopefully when I measure it and trim it, it'll be about 2 inches. And there we go, and it's just shy of 2 inches. But again, you don't have to color block. You could have a single inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. It's really just preference. I came up with the 2 inch because that's how much overlap you have here, or underlap. It falls short 2 inches. So that makes it easy to do this little design feature where it's framed out the centerpiece. Okay, so that's one flap, and we're going to repeat that process on this flap. Okay, so we'll start by laying this one in, and then we'll back off what we need to for the piece that goes there. Oops, I got that on my damp cloth. I need to move that. Okay, so let's get that up here. This one's actually closer to 1 3/4, so this must not have been 4 inches. It might have been a little bit bigger. I should have measured it before I laid it down, but it's okay. You won't see these side by side because they lay over each other. Okay, yeah, so it is a little bit shorter. So that's how I'm going to solve that. This side's closer to 2 inches and this one's a little bit shorter. This is the look I want, not this slight sliver here. So that's how we solve it. We just flip it the other way. There's always a solution, thank goodness. All right, so I think I finally got this all dry. So now it's dry enough that I can trim out another piece. So I know, yeah, that looks a little too short. I had trimmed out, that's not quite long enough. These two go here. And that's my cover, I think. You know what? This one looks short too. How did I do that? I made, it's not going the right direction. I made that a little bit too short. Do I have more of this paper? I do not. I don't think I do. Maybe a little bit short too. All right. Well, this is too short horizontally, so that's not going to work, but this will. Yeah, this will work. So this I'm going to cut to size. Normally I would just back off 1/8 of an inch, but since I was off the first time, I'm not trusting myself, so I'm going to go ahead and actually trim this to size. Hang on. Actually, this will work, I think. Yeah, this will work. I don't know if I cut the other one crooked or if the pocket's in crooked, but either way, I'm just going to trim it to size to actually fit. I hope. My paper slipped on me. Yeah, that's much better. That's much better. Okay, let's get some ink on here. Luckily I had enough paper. If not, there was another solution, which is more time consuming, but because I had a large gap here, the other thing to do is just split it in half, make each one smaller, and then run a coordinating strip down the center. Rather than having this extra wide border, which some people are okay with, and I'm fine with that for other people, but for me, it doesn't work. It will drive me crazy to not have that consistent border. I want to see this line run straight down, you know, top to bottom. Like so. So as you can see, you've got that very beautiful visual line up and down instead of it coming and then jutting in and then squaring off. Okay, let's go ahead and lay these down since they're floating around. So something I don't usually do, but I haven't decided what I'm going to do for the cover yet, which is not a good thing because it's usually good to set aside your cover early because you need 8.5 inches. And a lot of these call for either 4 or 8 inches, which doesn't leave an 8.5 inch scrap. So usually I set those aside first. I cut something out, and the more I look at it, the less I like it. So it was going to be to use the signature page, and I'm just not liking it. It's too busy. So I'm going to do something else. I just don't know what. Hopefully I've got a nice neutral background I can work with. That's not too busy. And I'm hoping I have enough of the black left over to wrap the spine. I'm not sure I do. I will make something work, but just don't know what yet. There we go. So those are in. All right, so now we still have to decorate this last flap. And this is where I think I messed up. Yes, and I don't have enough. Of this red paper left. I can throw it. Well, I don't have to throw that away, but I don't need it. So, ooh. Oh no, I was gonna say, ooh, it's tall enough, but it's got that white stripe on it. That's why. If it was this tall, it would be perfect. But I don't want the border. Okay, let's see what's left. Oh, lots of pretty paper, just not the one I want. Yeah, I don't really want to repeat a pattern. I try to do it so that I use all the patterns. Each pattern gets sort of a page dedicated to it. So that's not going to work. So my alternative, can't use that because it's going the wrong orientation, is to do a border strip. So that's what we're doing. So I'm actually going to make this a little bit thinner, a little bit smaller, and then I'm going to use this border strip, I think, right here on the bottom, like so. Let's see how that looks. I chose it because, why? Because I need to find my other, here it is. Because there's a lot of green in page 6. So I was thinking, oh, you know what else I could do is, kind of like that. It's a little boring. This is definitely going to have something in the pocket. I can use a strip of this right along the edge. Yeah. Here we go. Here we go. Let's take a look at that. What if I did that? And then it pulls that stripe back in. What do you think, guys? I think we should go for it. So let's do it. Let's do it. So I'm gonna do, I think I'm gonna do a 1/2 inch strip. Yeah. All right, so here's my 1/2 inch strip. Yeah, I like it. And that means I'll need to trim this piece down just a little bit, and I'll trim it to fit. I really like these stripes, and I like them so much I didn't feature the other side anywhere. It's okay. I'll show it to you. It's right here. But I felt like no matter what I did, I was cutting through, I mean, I used some of these design features, but I felt like I was cutting through the middle of one of the ads, and it just didn't work for me. I did not care for it. Okay, so that's in, and I think that pulls page 6 in, so we can set that aside. And now I can trim this to fit just right. And I actually want to trim off this side, so I'm going to lay it over this way. And the reason I say that is I don't want to cut right through the word Safari. And I'm trying to be cautious because I can always trim again, but you can't add paper on. How did I do? We did great. Great. Let's add some ink and get it down. And that is, we're coming to a wrap on page 7. And I need to do some housekeeping. That's always the case. As I get close to the end of a project, I feel like there's just junk everywhere. It's time to straighten up. There we go. And I am definitely going to put something in this pocket. I don't know what yet, to hold it all in place. We will add that later. Still got one more piece left. And this is what I think I was gonna do. So why am I adding this strip? So like I had mentioned before in the design process, since we're doing an 8x8, what happens is you wind up with these strips that are 12x4 or 4x8 in this case. And this is a 4.5-inch flap, so it's not quite, I mean, the panels aren't gonna quite fit. And I don't want all my panels to be 4 inches wide or 4 inches tall because that just gets boring. So that's why I wind up using these 1-inch strips instead of just having a solid red piece here. That's how you overcome that design challenge. Just FYI. Less of an issue if you're using a 12x12 and an 8x8, but as with the DCEs, it's only 12x12 paper. So all your trimmings are going to be 12x4 or 4x8 once you trim out the centerpiece. And in this case, I did it right. Like the other one where I did the stripe, if I had turned it around, it would have matched the pattern. This one continues the pattern. So now I take what's left, this red piece, and lay it in, and we are going to mark where to cut it. I had to shorten it first. Okay. So there's two methods to do this. One is what I'm doing, putting the little tick mark and you just trim it down. The other is to take your ruler and just measure from the end of the designer paper to the end of this. And because I want a 1/16 inch border, all I know is I'm going to cut it 1/8 of an inch shorter. So that's the other way to do it. I like this better because occasionally this strip may not go in straight. And this way, this allows me to trim my paper at a slight angle if it's necessary. And there's benefits to both. Okay. There's our finished page. I also like the way this frames out here, this centerpiece, so I like both of those things. So that's good. Lovely, lovely. So that's the end of page 7. I had to think about that for a second. I'm just going to stick something in here to hold it all closed, and when we get back together we will work on page 8. I'll see you guys soon.